is closed now. Don't worry, it's my last policy proposal today. Okay, this is a very complex policy proposal. So because I knew that we will have something like 20-30 minutes for presenting it and almost no time for discussion, I decided to make very short presentation. I know not everybody has read it, but I am trying to explain it as good as possible. The idea of this policy proposal started in RIPE, and the original title for this proposal there was a different one, but here the staff suggested to rename it. But I think that title explains much better what the policy tries to do. So the original title is Hijacking of Resources is a Policy Violation. Okay, that's the original title. And basically what it means is that if somebody is getting resources and someone else is hijacking the resources, typically by means of BGP, this is a policy violation. That's what we are trying to say. Basically, we are trying to explain that this is a matter not of routing, it's a matter of respect members. The members of every registry, including Afrinic, get their resources registered. Let's say it has been explained several times today, it's not you are getting the resources, is you are getting the right to use those resources. And in many of the documents, it talks about exclusive right. And this is obvious because it means that if you get an ASN or an IP address, you are the only one authorized to use it or to provide to your customers, right? I think that's very clear. So what happens if a member is using the resources of another member without his permission? I think everybody understands clearly that this is wrong, right? So this is what we are trying to state clearly with this policy proposal. And the end goal is that if somebody is doing this repeatedly, so not just one time by mistake, if somebody is doing it repeatedly and not by mistake, so on purpose, is declared a policy violation. And if there is a policy violation, then the staff could use whatever policy or rules we have in our documents, in the RSA, to say, hey, you are taking over the rights of other members, so please stop it, or you will get your membership canceled. That's it, basically. So this, again, just to restate what many people is discussing, not that much in the mailing list of Afrinic, because we didn't have that much discussion about this policy proposal, but this is not a matter of routing. We are not saying Afrinic should be the routing police or anything like that. We are not saying that operational mistakes, typically is said fat fingers, is a policy violation. It's not that the objective. We are only looking for clearly intentional and continued cases of policy violation. Okay, so if you make a mistake, nothing happens. If you make another, nothing happens. But if you are doing not mistakes every day, then you have a problem. Of course, there are other tools that might help, not necessarily solve 100% of the problem, but there are tools that might help to improve the situation and avoid hijackings. We all know, and we have Afrinic already working together with the other registries in RPKI, and we have Manners, which is an initiative mainly from ISOC, but it's being extended by all the communities, and many big operators are really taking it seriously. So that's the way to go, but we need clearly to define that if you keep doing it wrong and acting against your colleagues, your members, you are doing something broken, right? So, and I think it's my last slide. I don't think I have that much. This is just to give me a view, to give you a view of the procedure that we have designed within this policy proposal. So when there is a victim for a hijack, he can report it. the parties of this situation will be notified if in the report it has been provided sufficient data. The orange line that you see below, it means is basically discarded, because if you report a hijack but there is not sufficient data, there is nothing we can do. That's obvious. We have in the policy proposal designed a group of experts that will be volunteer people from the community. And the idea is that the group of experts will review the data, and depending on the result of that review, they can either discard if it was, for example, an accidental hijack, or they can say, we really need to conclude that there is a non-accidental hijack, okay? If there is a non-accidental hijack and the three, let's suppose the group of experts is 3 people. If the 3 unanimously decide that it was non-accidental and on purpose, then there will be time for the hijacker or the suspected hijacker to provide objections, and there will be time for a publication of the report. So if somebody else from the community can provide some inputs, hey, you missed that, it was an accident because that, this and that and that. So in those cases when there is either no response from the hijacker or there is a unanimous declaration and there is not an appeal, it will be ratified as a policy violation, and we stop that there. So the policy stops, the policy proposal stops at that point. We are not, as the policy proposal, by a simple case, taking it any punishment option, okay? During all the process, you see there are many steps for the report to be dismissed. So we are, we believe that this is very warrantor for any suspected accused party. And let me double check, but yeah, the last question I have is, if we don't do this ourselves as a community, should we prefer that sooner or later lawyers, governments, regulators take part of this? I really believe that this community is working very well in self-regulation. We know that the PDP is not easy. We know that it takes time to discuss things. We know that it will be much better that everybody, when there is a policy proposal presented in the list, everybody contributes and we come to the meeting with almost consensus or no consensus, but a clear view, instead of waiting for the last minute and avoiding that a small sentence is not liking me and I object to this policy proposal because this sentence don't like to me. So let's try to go in that direction with these policy proposals. And I explained it before, it has been submitted to all the regions. We have not actually done the official one to APNIC, but we are preparing it. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Thank you for your presentation. Questions,
Tomatoes?
comments, contributions, very briefly. Thank you. We are 12 minutes into our break. Carry on, please.
Ben Madison, Work Online. I spend a lot of my time dealing with routing security related stuff, and so I'm not unsympathetic to the problem. I think you're talking about it in entirely the wrong room. What you get when you get resources from an RIR is an entry in a database saying that they are unique in that database and they're unique within the system. You don't get anything that guarantees that they're unique in the default free zone. And I think trying to shoehorn the definition of the one into the other is really, really dangerous. I don't really have anything against having some sort of community-based, kind of panel-based review of how people are behaving out on the internet, but I think the further that is away from the RIR system, the better.
Because I didn't have time, I didn't explain it probably very well, but this is actually done by the community. So it's the community choose a panel of experts, as you said, and the panel of experts is the one reviewing that.
That's fine. I think it's completely the wrong subject matter for a RIR policy. there exist mechanisms like RPKI, like the routing registry data, for the registries to signal what their members have indicated should be the correct use of their policy. It's up to operators independently to choose whether or not to listen to that data. And if we think as a community that we need a stronger community-based mechanism to enforce good behavior, then that's great and I can get behind that. But it's not an RIR thing.
Remember that RPKI and manners don't solve 100% of the problem. So sometimes we need to somehow defend the rights of members. And yes, it's registration, but it's at the end is very close to what we do with the resource numbers, right?
I think maybe let's have that debate outside, because Devola is going to shout at me if I get into that now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. Haruna Umar Adoga again from Nigeria. I have been following this proposal. I think from the first email you sent in the RPD mailing list, I want to believe that I was like the first person, so to say, to comment about, I raised some few issues when you did that. And I'm glad to see that you were able to, I want to believe that it's based on my suggestion that you increased this, it was 4 weeks for the number of, that's the time that you give people to respond if at all there is any suspected activity of. I personally suggested that you make it 6 weeks. So that's a good thing I'm saying there. And I also do believe that since operational errors, such as a mistake in a BGP configuration can lead to what might be perceived as hijacking activity, then I think it is ideal that your proposal, if the suspected resource hijacker a reasonable amount of time. So this something you've addressed, but we have to really make it clear what is intentional hijack, and like always, my point is always about technical perspective. If we believe that we know that BGP has that kind of effect, it can be perceived as what do you call a hijacking activity. So the administrators or the registries should be allowed to explain their activity, which might not be intentional. And I also want to point out some fundamental errors, I believe. You can correct me if I am wrong, that RIIs are not responsible for giving out the right of use, right?
My perception is that somehow, yes. Otherwise, this policy don't make sense.
It means I am correct?
Yeah.
That statement is correct. They don't have, they cannot grant right of use. RIIs.
No, yes. Okay. In my perception, we are getting, when we get resources from an RIR, we are getting the right to use it. And in many parts of the documents, it says exclusive right. Exclusive, it means only for you. So no other member can take over that.
Okay. Sorry. And also, if we agree that they don't do that, then there is a big misconception here, because RIIs just grant registration uniqueness, if I am correct, and the right of use is usually granted by those who initiate, accept, and re-announce these prefixes in their routing table or in their routes. That's the ISP, so to say. So I think from this point I've raised, this proposal needs to be, let me say, reviewed if you want to put some of my points into consideration. And if you're asking for my opinion, I would say I do not support it as it is right now.
Okay, so you can continue the conversation. Yes, please. Yeah. Arno.
Okay. Arno Amelina, Togorer. Juste quelques observations.
Some observation in relation with this policy. You don't think that policy was put into consideration by another policy review. When we do an audit, we shall be able to know if somebody has put a prefix which does not belong to him, or if he has taken another identity for another person. My second observation, I'm seeing that Afrinic has anticipated on this policy. I saw what we have done, and I hope on this principle, if each member could protect his resources through BBKI, your question will be solved. Thank you so much.
All 100% of the problem. So there is always a space for something that can escape that.
Okay. Center Mike.
Thank you. As Munsami, I'm a board member. I'm not speaking for the board. I would like to know the financial impact of this proposal if it's implemented. That's all. Thank you.
We don't know because we don't get impact analysis, so we don't know. We will need to evaluate that depending on the staff analysis.
Okay, thank you very much, Jordi.
Thank
you to everyone who has contributed. The decision is to send this policy proposal back to the RPD mailing list for further discussion. There is no rough consensus to proceed as is. We are way behind time. You have eaten 20 minutes into the break. The next policy proposal that should be on the docket for those who were not in the room earlier is not going to be presented because the author has withdrawn the policy proposal. I think we should take a 9-minute break and then we come back for the next policy proposal. This is the Afrinic Policy Development Process BIS, followed by the PDWG elections, and then we'd have the open policy microphone. Oh, and ASOAC elections as well. So we have 2 sets of elections, PDWG co-chairs, you want the passion, ASOAC elections as well. Thank you. 9 minutes, please be back in the room. Thank you.